This morning we are doing a part 3 of our featurette on Turkey. And this part is about Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. He lived from 1881 to 1938. He came into the public awareness as a war hero in World War I, specifically in the Battle of Gallipoli, where he defended Turkey, which was still ruled by the Ottomans. You remember when we talked about Sophia Hagia Sophia and said that it had been a Christian church until the Ottomans conquered Constantinople in 1453? Well, here we were, 1919, and they were still in charge of things. So he defended his country, and then after the war, he had to defend Turkey from being divided by the Allied forces. You know how they went in and divided several countries after the war. And he managed to get troops to stop that as part of the Turkey War for Independence. Then he went on and ousted the Ottomans, and he founded the Republic of Turkey. This is for the first time in history. If you ever want to study Turkish history, good luck. You have to begin 2,500 years ago. There's a lot that happened. I started here, World War One. Ataturk served as president from 1923 until his death in 1938. He wanted a homogenized Turkey. Turkey was an assortment of different countries, different regions, different nationalities, different languages, different ethnicities. He initiated a rigorous program of political, economic, and cultural reforms with the ultimate aim of building a modern, progressive, and secular nation state. So part of this gets good. Part of this has to do with the fez. Fez is that hat on the right. It was the successor to the turban, and the turban is shown on the man on the left. At one time, the turban was worn by all of the Turks, and it became a symbol, one thing of them being religious, but another thing almost like a caricature. And the turbans were outlawed by the Ottomans in 1829 and replaced by the fezzes. So then, over the next, 100 years or so, the fez took on the same problems as the turban had had before, in that it became almost a caricature of the Turks and symbolized them as a religious nation, which they no longer were. They were a secular nation state. And so in 1925, Ataturk outlawed the turbans. Have you ever lived anywhere where they outlawed two different kinds of hats? One of the things, however, that they did not outlaw was Elizabeth Taylor. She looks darn good in a turban. And that's just a joke, but nobody would ever outlaw Elizabeth Taylor. Part of the reforms of Ataturk was to have an alphabet created for the Turkish language. They'd relied primarily on the Arabian script, and it was a language that was written, one thing, from right to left instead of left to right, and in characters that were not recognizable by the Western world. So Ataturk got together a group of linguists and insisted that the Latin alphabet be used, which linked Turkey to the West thereafter. The Turkish alphabet has 29 letters, but they left out Q and W and X. They didn't have any need for them. However, they do have 8 vowels, and we only have 5. So if you look at these letters, you'll see that there's two O's. One's got the little dots above it. And there's two I's, and one of them has a dot and one does not. There's two U's, one's got the dots, and a couple of other letters are duplicates. These are called diacritics, the little glyphs that are attached either above or below letters to make differentiations in the way that they're pronounced. Now, when this alphabet was implemented, that meant that 100% of the Turks were illiterate. They all had to learn to read again. And they had to learn what their language now looked like in this alphabet, and there were new words for things. And they just had to give up the Fez. I think that these people had PTSD. I really do. They were like knocked around and gave up this and had to learn that and became illiterate, and they couldn't wear their hats anymore, and it went on from there. This is an example of a computer keyboard with the Turkish alphabet on it. And when you look at it, you'll see right here is the I with a dot. And here, in the place where I is on most keyboards, is the I without the dot. When I was in Turkey, our tour group stayed at a hotel that had a business center. And a lot of the members of the tour group went to send emails, and their emails kept on not going through. And it was because they were using the I where they were used to seeing it, but really they needed the I with the dot, and they needed to be using this key. There are other letters that might have been a problem also, but the I was the one that got them. Another part of what was called Turkification was requiring surnames. They passed the surname law in 1934, and there were guidelines as to what last names, what surnames the Turks could choose. They had to be Turkish surnames, regardless of the ethnicity of the people. They had to, it couldn't be silly. They had to either reflect what you did for a living or some noble concept. They were given a deadline and told that if the head of the family did not choose a surname for his family, then it would be assigned by this certain deadline. This is when Ataturk became Ataturk's last name, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and the word Ataturk means the father of the Turks. During his leadership, Ataturk had thousands of schools built. He made primary education mandatory and free and included girls. He was a supporter of women's rights. And this slide shows 18 females who joined the Turkish parliament in the 1935 general elections. I'm getting goosebumps. And in 1993, Tansu Çiller became Turkey's first female prime minister. Turkey was ahead of the times. They were ahead of many European countries and many of the states in the United States in giving women's rights and the right to vote and the right to hold national office. Then Ataturk died in 1938, and this is his mausoleum in Ankara. It's huge. It goes underground too. You could spend more than a day touring the whole thing. He had always been a heavy smoker and a heavy drinker. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. And sometimes our heroes are loved even more because of the weaknesses that show they are human, and that applied to him. If you go to Turkey, you will fall in love with Ataturk. It is guaranteed. The current leader of Turkey is, I practice all these names, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. That beautiful picture with these slides. He is president of the Republic of Turkey, which is their country. This is how they spell their country, the name of their country. His wife, the first lady, her name is Emine, and I think she's so beautiful. She also wears a more conservative headdress than is common in Turkey. As a general rule, women in Turkey wear clothes similar to European women, but a little on the modest side. And even the Turkish religious women do not follow a strict dress code like in most Islamic countries. They wear loose clothing and headscarves while still being stylish and colorful. And here is the first couple, the president and the first lady. Erdogan was the mayor of Istanbul from 1994 to 1998. So you can assume that he was on his way rising in politics while there was a female prime minister. So he came in when Turkey was becoming really something, really something. Under his leadership, the government changed. It changed from being led by a parliament to being led by a president, a presidential style of government. And he ran for president. So after he served as prime minister from 2003, he became president in 2014. And he still is president. Now, what I read was that presidents hold their terms for 5 years, and that would mean 2024, his second term was up. And if that is true, if my understanding is true, that might be a very exciting year for Turkey, and to keep your eye on it. There have been criticisms of his leadership, including an attempted coup in 2016. One of the things he is criticized for are some of the sanctions and censorship that he's put on the people, that he's put on the press and the reporters. He's made it illegal to criticize Turkey. And he has, from time to time, banned public access to websites, including commonly used ones like Twitter and Facebook and ones that we use every day. I think that one of the easiest ways of understanding the way the world looks at Turkey right now and some of the issues they have is to know what's going on in their trying to become part of the European Union. And this slide shows the 27 countries of the European Union. And the prospects of Turkey joining the EU have been dim for a long time. In practice, Ankara has no credible prospect of membership in the near future, if ever. Today, Turkey comes nowhere near fulfilling the EU's eligibility rules, which stipulate that candidate countries have institutions that guarantee democracy and the rule of law and human rights, as well as a well-functioning market economy. So I wanted to include information about tourist safety. This is exciting. I just get excited just looking at that. Stay tuned. We just might have a tour to Turkey next spring. Yeah, that could really happen very easily. Turkey is safe to visit if you avoid some parts of it, namely those near the border with Syria. You should be aware that the tourist hot spots like restaurants and shops and public transportation are places where the most thefts and pickpocketing occur, and that there is some violent crime also. We know that no travel is risk-free during the COVID pandemic. but Turkey is relatively safe and open for tourism. However, it should be noted that at least this past March of 2022, there were high numbers of COVID cases and Omicron cases as that continued to spread around the country. Those are things it would be common sense to check out no matter where you were planning to go. And so then I'm going to close with a list of 14 things to avoid while you are touring Turkey. The first is don't wear shoes in worship places. Do not forget table etiquette. Avoid obscuring a praying person's view. Do not disrespect Ramadan customs. Do not board a cab without a taxi logo. That means if the car doesn't have a sign on it saying it's a taxi, don't get in it. Do not wear revealing clothes. Do not misuse the Turkish language. The next one's really interesting. Avoid leaving food on your plate. Avoid consuming too much alcohol. Avoid directly addressing a Turkish woman in public. Don't mind if people smoke at the dinner table. Don't buy stones or fossils. Don't buy stuff without bargaining. And the most important one of all is don't disrespect Ataturk. And on that note, we will end our featurette. Thank you very much.